So today's session will be on buyer agency and tenant agency. I do want to start off with the buyer agency agreement. I'm going to share my screen. So I created this loop and I can show you guys where to find these documents if you ever need them. In case like you somehow skip picking a template, it's very easy. You all have access to them, but I'm going to open the exclusive buyer agency agreement. You all know how it looks like. You know how to fill out the top portion, buyer's name, broker, your name, and then the area that you cover, that's also very important. Just remember, the buyer can have multiple buyer agency agreements. If you only do a specific address, they may have another address with another realtor, right? If you're not willing to drive from here to all the way to Atlantic City, please don't just put New Jersey. Only specifically put the areas that you're willing to drive yourself. If you're not willing to drive an hour, that's very unfair to the buyer to have yourself covered. You know, if they're looking in different counties that you don't cover, then only do the counties that you actually do cover and you work at. So that's where it's becoming an issue, right? Because if a buyer wants to see a house in South Jersey and you're not willing to go there, then that you shouldn't be holding them liable on the contract. So please be specific. And if you cover the entire state, that's great. Number 3, agency disclosure. You have to disclose. I'm pretty sure most of you are probably picking number 2, buyer agent disclose dual agency. Just a reminder, designated agent means that the buyer would not prefer for you to be a dual agent, meaning that you can represent the seller and the buyer. However, another RE/MAX select can represent the seller. So just keep that in mind. Just know what the difference is in case they ask you. You don't want to be like, oh, I don't know. I just picked number 2. That's designated agency. Okay. Buyer's agent, that means they don't want to work with RE/MAX Select. That means you can't even show them RE/MAX Select properties. So you want to make sure you understand the difference. Terms, this is super, super important. If you have a buyer in the beginning, you should always just do, if you don't know them and you're meeting them for the first time, do a 1-day showing, right? You're showing them the property. You want to make sure you get covered. How do you know you're going to want to work with that buyer? They may turn out to be the worst client of all New Jersey. You may not want to represent them. So don't be obligated that you have to do 3 months, 6 months. Build the relationship with the client. So the way you would handle is, hey, I'm going to show you this property. In the event you end up liking and want to purchase it, you're going to have to work with me. And if we decide that this is not the property for you, but we want to continue the working relationship, we can extend this agreement. So 1-day showing. This is where we find some issues. Please remember, even if your buyer is not writing you a check, they're not adding to the offer, you have to let them know how you get compensated. If this amount here is blank or 0, you're not going to collect money. And if you did and you get audited, they may make you pay the money back. Just keep that in mind. Okay. You may think the admins are giving you a hard time. They're not. They're protecting you and your commission. You have to let the buyer know what your commission is, whether it's 1%, 2%, or 3%. You have to be specific. If you're collecting a flat fee, you can put in a flat fee, right? A lot of times you guys are helping new construction and sometimes they just give you guys a flat fee referral. That's what you would put on this agency agreement. 5,000, 10,000, whatever it is, this has to be filled out. You cannot leave it blank. Okay?
Hey, Donna, somebody asked if it could be TBD to be
No,
determined.
absolutely not.
It has to be specific.
Correct. You see here, it may not be open-ended. You can't put an example. You can't even say between 2% and 2.5%. This is why there's an addendum to this contract. If you agree to 2%, you find them a property that the seller's offering 2.5%, you can do an addendum saying, hey, for 123 Main Street, buyer broker commission has been changed to 2.5%. But you can't just leave it open-ended. It has to be the exact amount. The other thing is section 2, the protection period. Okay, you have to put a protection period here. What does this mean? If you're showing a buyer properties for 6 months, you spend your entire weekends helping them looking at houses, and they decide to cancel the agreement, or the agreement has been expired, how many days do you want to be protected in case they want to go back and buy that property? Typically, I would put 180 days. We don't tell you what to do with that. You decide. Some agents put 60 days, 90 days, 365, which I think it's pushing it. But you decide. Usually, I think 180 days, you'll know, because sometimes, let's say you submitted an offer on the property and they accepted another offer. The other offer went under contract. 2 months later, it fell apart because they couldn't perform. And your client may now they have a cancellation from your agreement. You want to be protected in case that buyer wants to buy this property. So I think 180 days, it's sufficient, but again, you guys decide. You may do 60, 90 days, whatever it is. Very important. Please do not leave this blank. Let me see if there's more questions. Even if the seller, correct, even if the seller's paying commission, the buyer has to know what you're going to get paid. Here, if your client says, oh, I don't feel comfortable, I can't afford to pay you 2%, 2.5%, you can make them feel assured that any offer you submit, you will ask the seller to pay for the commission. It doesn't necessarily mean they will, but you can certainly make the client say, hey, I'm gonna, sometimes when you're showing properties, you already know if they're offering a commission. So you can assure them like, hey, the seller is paying 2% out. So I'm gonna, when we submit an offer, I'm gonna be requesting that the seller pay the compensation. What happens if your buyer agreement is 2.5% and the seller's offering 2%? You need to have that conversation with the buyer from the beginning. No surprises. Hey, for me to help you find a property, this is how I get paid. My commission fee is 2.5%. A lot of times when we're finding properties, the seller will offer compensation. Sometimes they may offer the 2.5%, they may offer less, and then you'll be responsible for the difference. But if you don't have that additional cash, we can add it certainly to the offer and ask the seller to either pay a concession or pay, you add it to the mortgage and request the seller to offer the 2.5%. There's different ways to work around that price in case you don't want to reduce it. There's times where you guys have come to us and say, hey, I had put 2.5%, but the seller's only offering 2%, so I want to reduce it. Is that okay? Absolutely. That's what you have the addendum for. Broker duties, again, I think this is fine. We're not having any issues there. Additional, if you want to add another clause to make your buyers feel better, saying that the buyer broker, any offer submitted, we will request that the seller pay the compensation. This is the place that you will add the additional agreement that you make with the buyer. Anyone have any questions, or you can either unmute yourself or write it on the chat. But just remember, on the buyer agency agreement, you can represent more than one buyer on the property. Let's say you have 3 buyers and they all want to submit an offer on 123 Main. You can do that as long as you disclose them to all 3 buyers that that's what you're doing. I also would recommend you reach out to your manager, some of your colleagues, and ask them for a favor to write an offer. Typically, managers will do it for you. But you can, if you really want to write 2 or 3 offers for, 3 different buyers, you can. I know my leadership team is here. Was there other questions that were brought up that we want to address?
Hey, Donna, in the chat, it says, even if the buyer, it says the buyer's agreement is saying that the buyer is paying. So, I think that's where they have a problem putting that 2% on there.
Yeah, so ultimately, it's always been this way. When you think about it, the buyer's buying the property, the commission's really coming from the buyer's funds. However you look at it, your client, your buyer is agreeing that this is what you're going to get paid. Who's coming up with the money? That's where you have to disclose it on the buyer agency agreement. You can say, look, in order for me to get paid, you need to be aware that this is my percentage. This is what I get paid. What are the rules about terminating an agreement? Okay. So I'll answer that question in 1 minute, but you need it technically it is coming from the buyer. You're representing the buyer's paying you the percentage. You can write on the notes how you would like to address it with the buyer to make them feel better. You can say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, my commission is 2%. I'm going to write here that the buyer broker, any offer they submit on behalf of the buyer, they will request that the seller pay the compensation of 2%. You can write a clause something like that. It's also stating here, if you scroll at the top, include in any offer to seller, the seller will pay the broker commission. That should also assure the buyer. If you put 0, you leave it blank, you're not supposed to collect a fee. Okay. Before I answer Bobby's question, another thing that has been brought up is who can request this buyer agency agreement. I've had over the weekend, somebody said, hey, I submit an offer and the listing agent requested a copy. That's inappropriate. You do not share the buyer agency agreement with the listing agent. The only people that really can request it is a buyer's attorney, title company, and the MLS and the board, of course. Okay, you do not have to share it with the seller's side. It's none of their business. Okay, it's not up to them to determine whether or not you have the right or proper buyer agency agreement. How to terminate the agreement, or let's say if you don't terminate and expired, you can't just be like, okay, 3 months is up, that's it, like it's done, I don't have an agreement. You have to send an email, whether your client texts you, calls you, or emails saying they want to terminate it. You have to send them an email within 3 days with all the properties you have shown them, all the properties you have written an offer, and include the protection period. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, the agreement is terminated as of June 16, 2026. In the event you buy any of the properties I have shown you below, you will owe Remax Select 2% in the next 180 days. That is the proper way to do it. Now, what happens if you didn't do it in the past and something comes up? We'll have to deal with it then. We haven't had any issues as of right now, but that is the proper way to do it, whether it's termination or expired. If it expired, be like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, our agreement has now been has expired as of June 16. I wanted to thank you for, working with me. Here's all the properties I have shown you. Here's all the properties I've written offers. I just want to make sure you are aware that in the event any of these properties become available and you want to purchase, I am protected under a 180-day protection period, and you will owe Remax Select at 2%, 2.5%, 3%. Let's see the chat. What if buyer writes in their own requirement? So, Serby, what kind of requirement are you asking?
I had someone who wanted to start scribbling all stuff all over it and say, I was like, this is for my information, and for you to interpret, or a lawyer can interpret it, but not for you to write in. So they're like, well, only if we show it up until this day. I said, well, it's all in the information when we put the dates and terminations and all of that. So I didn't know what the
Yeah, so this is a pre-printed contract not
Yeah.
even us can cross out anything. We only have the right to write on the blank spots, and that's why you have the additional notes. If they want to add anything specific, just speak to Kenya. But that's why they give us a whole big blank page to
Yeah.
write any additional comments, but they can't cross out any words. We don't even have the right to do that. Um, it just goes back to the contract of sale. We have no right to make any changes. So that's how I would handle that. Does the listing agent have the right? I think I answered that. So, Bobby, absolutely not. The listing agent has no right to ask for the buyer agency agreement. If they ever question you whether or not you have one, um, they can go through the right channel, which is the MLS. MLS can request a copy of your buyer agency agreement.
And Donna, the reason I asked that is I wanted everybody else to hear the answer.
Yes. Yes. And then, oh my God, we have to keep all these forms. Yes. Unfortunately, you should be keeping track of what properties you're showing. This is how you guys get paid. You all are investing your family time with these clients. Of course, you want to track what you're showing because you know what? This is how you get paid. You don't want to show somebody houses for 6 months and then the contract is terminated or expired, and then you find out they bought a house with another realtor. I will still try and fight for you guys, but the proper ways they're gonna ask me, show me the email. And if we don't have an email, there you didn't follow the protocol because they really heavily they did a lot of session in 2024 regarding this. Okay. Another thing we've noticed, which Mary brought up earlier, the dates. You can't have a contract of sale written on the 14th or a month ago and now you're closing and now you're having the buyer sign the agency agreement today. It's a big no-no. There's been a big violation at another agency because of that. If the investigators come, they're gonna know you showed them properties before you had an offer. I mean, you've shown them properties before you had them sign the buyer agency agreement. So the buyer agency agreement has to be the first document that's signed. Remember, dot loop, it's all documented. And if you have clients right now that you have not done that, I'm going to highly encourage that you get this already signed and handled and speak to your manager immediately, and they will guide you how to get this done. Every person needs to have a buyer agency agreement. All right, before any other documents are signed. Because what happens if you get audited and they find one of these files done incorrectly, they're going to go track all your other documents. Okay? Also, if you're out, you're busy, you're on social media. Everyone is on social media right now, right? You're like, oh, showing busy, showing going every weekend. And if they come and they say, hey, Jonah, open Mary Pack's dot loop. Where's her buyer agency agreement? She claims to be out showing houses every weekend. Where's the buyer agency agreement? So please, I hope you're not taking a risk. If you have not been to one of our masterminds, one of the brokers that got fined was $25,000. E&O does not cover. We don't cover that. That's going to come from you. So please make sure that's a lot of money to be spent on a buyer agency agreement. All right, now I'm going to go back. This was the buyer agency agreement. There's an addendum. Oh, I'm sorry, this was the tenant one. So if you don't have to have a buyer agency agreement re-signed every single time you extend it or you make any changes. This is what the addendum is for. You can add, so let's say you did 2.5% on the buyer agency agreement, but you found them a property for 2%, and the buyer says, Serby, I am so sorry, I cannot afford the 0.5%. And you say, you know what, I'm happy with the 2%. You need to have this done. Vice versa. If you have it for 2% or 1.5% buyer agency agreement and you're getting 2%, you have to have this addendum that says the buyer has agreed that you're going to get compensated the 2%. If you did 1.5 on the buyer agency agreement and you got paid 2%, you get audited, you're gonna have to return that 0.5%. Okay? So use this. You can use this to extend the dates. Let's say you did it for one property or 2 days or 3 days, 1 week, and now the buyer says, "Hey, I'm really happy with you, Marilyn. I want to work with you. You guys agreed to 3 months. You can use this addendum. Very easy, simple. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Okay. The next thing I want to touch base on is the tenant agency agreement. I hope you guys are using this as well for the tenants. Nothing has really changed. Tenants are used to paying the 1 month broker fee, right? But now you need an agreement signed, okay? So that's why comes in handy. You need to have this signed. The tenant has to understand that they're responsible for the 1 month broker fee. What happens if the landlord is paying their broker and you have the buyer tenant agency agreement that says the tenant owes you 1 month? You can still collect 1 month from the tenant. If that's what your agreement says, then you can collect the 1 month. What if you want to be nice? You're like, yeah, no, I'm sorry, they're struggling. That's fine. Use the addendum to change it to 0.5 month. You have to include same terms. Obviously, you're not taking a retainer, commission, flat fee, other. I would probably do other 1 month broker fee because remember it can't be open-ended. So the best way to do it is 1 month broker fee of the rental because you may find them a rental that's 2,000, 2,100, 2,500. So you can use this portion with other 1 month broker fee of the rental amount. Here's the protection period again. I just want to say that, you could find, especially if you are the listing agent, this becomes an issue. Or it could become an issue because you could be wasting your time. If you have the listing, your fiduciary duty is to the owner. What happens if you get all those inquiries from the tenants? Like you may get 30 and you're like, I don't want to spend all this time writing 30 tenant agency agreement. I would suggest you do an open house to get everybody in at the same time. But you also, if you don't have them sign this exclusive tenant agency agreement, don't be surprised when they send you a application with another realtor on your listing that you showed. That's the risk you play. And if you don't have the sign, there's nothing that we can do about it. Even if you are the one who introduced them and showed them the property. That's the risk you play as the listing agent. Any questions? Same thing, same rules applies with the correct way of terminating and cancel the contract. You have to send them an email with the properties you have shown them and the applications you have submitted. Okay. One thing that you guys have also asked me is, oh, I can't find the list. I can't find the buyer agency agreement. I'm going to show you where there are. No matter what happens to the loops, you as a real estate agent all have access to this. So add a document, no matter what loop you're in, whether it's a listing, referral, whatever it is, add a document, templates. You're going to scroll at the bottom where it says New Jersey Realtor Documents. If you've never used this folder, it's going to ask you to put your ID, your NRDS ID number. You all have it because you all pay your board dues. You put in your number, you save it, and you already have the open folder. You can find any of these documents. So if you just type in buyer, here's all the addendums, the buyer agency agreement, etc. Same thing with the tenant. Here's all the addendums, the exclusive tenant agency agreement. You also have the CIS, right? Don't forget about the CIS. That's on the buyer agency agreement. It says that you already provided the CIS to the buyer. So make sure you have this signed at the same time. Don't have them sign the buyer agency agreement and you don't have the CIS signed. All right, it's about 9:58. Anyone has any questions? Any confirmation?
Jen, I just did want to add that these are all legal documents, and agents have won lawsuits by, providing the buyer's agreement saying they signed an exclusive agreement, and the buyer went to another agent. And so the buyer had to pay back the commission to, the person who had the original agreement, because it's a legal document. It's a contract between you and the buyer. Whoever is paying, you know, um, that's to be decided, but it is a legal document.
Yeah, and let me see. This makes sense. Want to go old school and have a bunch print out and do it in person. Yes, you can definitely do it in person. The way I would do it is before I even show the property, have this document signed because you don't want to show it because they may try and trick you, like, oh, can we just go inside first and then we'll sign it there? No, because that could be a tester. Just remember that they could be a tester. They may be a real buyer, but also a tester where they're trying to see if you're willing to bend the rules to show them the property. Yeah. And Steve, I don't know which office you're in with, but what I'm going to tell you is this is going back to doing the buyer consultation, not just showing them properties. I don't also don't feel comfortable you guys meeting strangers at a property. The proper way is doing a quick buyer consultation. Even if it's on Zoom, 10, 15 minutes. Like, hey, I have a duty to complete and I have to tell you what you're required as a buyer, what I'm going to be doing for you, how I operate and how I get compensated. But I know some of you guys pay for leads, and typically they just want to they want to work with somebody who's just going to open the door for them. But do you really want to go on a beautiful Sunday, spend your time opening a house for someone that's not going to be loyal to you? Like, do you really want to risk that? That's something that you guys need to make a decision. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Um, that's going to be my recommendation. Please remember, just ending this session, the buyer agency agreement should be the first document signed in your loop before any other documents. Buyer agency, CIS go along together. They should be provided. You have to send a copy to your client when they sign it. Don't just keep it. Hey, thank you for signing the buyer agency agreement. Here's a copy for your records. Because they could come back and say, hey, my agent never sent me a copy. I didn't even know what I signed. This is your money. This is your contract. This is how you get paid. I know we like to be in a rush. Sometimes we're showing 4 or 5 people in a day, like houses, and we just want to get it done. Please protect your commission because it will make it really hard for us to fight for your commission when you're in that position. Marilyn, I know you have a meeting, but really quick, did I answer all the questions we had discussed with agents? The proper way of signing it, the protection
Yes,
period.
I think so. Yes. Very good information.
All right, this is going to be recorded. If you ever need to go back to watch it, it's going to be on our hub as well as our weekly newsletter that goes out every Monday at 8. I hope you guys take some time to review that email because that's where we put very valuable information. What we do is we gather all the emails we get throughout the week and we put into one email for you and what's important to you guys as well. My last thing, because I actually just thought of this, please do not have anything in writing where you're encouraging clients to cancel another agreement with another agent. That's a big one. You cannot. The buyer agency agreement tells shows the buyer how to do it. You cannot interfere with another relationship. Even if they say, "Oh, Mary, I really want to work with you. I don't know why I signed this agreement. How do I cancel it?" They need to speak to an attorney. You cannot tell them what to write, what to say to their agent to cancel it. That's interference. That's going to be an ethical complaint against you. So do not interfere with another agent's client.
Even though they're asking you, saying,
Even if they're asking you, you cannot. Remember, we also represent buyers. Do you want another agent to show your client and tell them how to cancel it? I would fight for you guys if somebody ever did that to you. I would go straight to the board and file an ethics complaint. We work really hard. And unfortunately, sometimes the grass is not always greener on the other side. So buyers may think like they may be, you may be the listing agent and they're going to try and trick you to try and get them out of their buyer agency agreement because they think you may get them a deal to buy the property. So just follow that protocol. That's it. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you found this valuable, and we will see you guys next week.
thank you.